The KwaZulu-Natal Film Sector Baseline Report aims to identify and highlight, within the context of the national and international environments, the main trends, issues, and changes that have occurred in the sector since 2015. This study includes establishing the contribution of the KZN film sector to the provincial GDP and the national GDP, the impact of the sector in terms of job creation, barriers of entry existing in the sector, and finally, the financing mechanisms in the sector. The South African film sector includes feature films, documentaries, TV series, animation series, and short films, which all go through a step-by-step value chain process: pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. In 2019, leading producers in Hollywood produced 19,101 films, while the national film sector of South Africa produced 190 films, with total box office gross earnings of 1.2 billion rand, a decline from the previous years with 1.3 billion rand. Despite this revenue decline, South Africa's domestic box office revenue has thrived in recent years, recording a total of 59.6 million rand in 2019. This was a significant increase from 50.4 million rand in 2018. It is, however, important to highlight that these figures reflect a status quo before the COVID-19 pandemic. The South African film sector has experienced growth over the recent years, attracting more producers and the creation of more films, but a great number of barriers to entry still discourage many. In the 2020 KZN Film Sector Baseline Study, the following were identified as barriers to entry: lack of skilled crew and infrastructure, lack of large local market or consumer base, poor distribution of local films, limited access to local films by most of the population. Despite the efforts made to support the film sector, the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic crippled the film sector world over, leading to 10 million value chain related jobs and a $7 billion revenue loss as of March 2020. The subsequent limitation of movement in the country led to a further decline of film production in KZN. The Durban Film Office confirmed that more than double the number of productions were filmed and permits were issued in the first 6 months of 2019 than in the first 6 months of 2020. The KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission has developed protocols to assist the local film sector to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. The aim of the protocols is to minimize the risk of spreading the virus in the film and television production environment and to understand the virus and its mode of transmission. Questionnaires were sent out to understand the perceptions of key film sector role players. The findings were: almost 55% of graduates work in the media and entertainment sector. Approximately 27% are employed in the film sector, while others continue to pursue their studies. Noted employment challenges from 73% of students and graduates were the lack of job opportunities in the local film sector, followed by the lack of experience, which accounted for around 16%. On the role of training program within the sector, 64% of respondents have not engaged in training programs in addition to their tertiary level education. 16% of KZN business owners responded that they had established their businesses in 2017, followed by almost 14% in 2018 and almost 13% in 2015. Approximately 10% of businesses from the sample are long-standing businesses. The study also found that 90% of KZN businesses mainly operate in KwaZulu-Natal, followed by less than 5% who operate in Gauteng, the Western Cape, and internationally. It was also noted that 38% of businesses had an annual turnover of less than 20,000 Rand in 2019, followed by 22% who had a turnover of between 20,000 Rand and 50,000 Rand. Those results indicate that most KZN film sector businesses are not performing well financially. In terms of DTIC incentives, KZN received 0.9% of grant funding in 2018-19, lower than the Western Cape and Gauteng. Investment needed to create additional employment opportunities in KZN is much higher than in Gauteng and the Western Cape, at 314,767 Rand per additional job in the film sector. A study by Urban Econ in 2020 estimated that the KZN film sector contributed over 875 million Rand in terms of production expenditure between 2019 and 2020. This expenditure translates to a total value of 464 million Rand to KZN's GDP. This equates to an additional GDP contribution of 136 million Rand and 2,782 additional employment opportunities since 2015. In order to improve transformation, human capital development and employment in the KZN film sector, it is important to address the apparent skills gap among historically disadvantaged groups. The development of studio facilities and related infrastructure would be beneficial to the continued growth of the sector. Provincial employment and human capital development can also be improved through the development of student and graduate support agency that will assist students and graduates both during and after their studies. The funding mechanisms in KZN can become more efficient and less resource wastage can occur if transparency and accountability in the sector are improved. Provincial employment and human capital development can be enhanced through the restructuring of the curriculum in film and TV schools to include more practical-based courses. Employment, funding mechanisms, and human capital development can also be enhanced if agencies such as the KZNFC, NFVF, and DTIC ensure that information in the sector is accessible and up-to-date. All of the above recommendations can increase the growth of the sector by addressing transformation, employment, funding, and human capital development, thereby increasing the KZN film sector's contribution to the provincial GDP and the national GDP. For further information, please visit our website at www.kznfilm.co.za. Our kingdom is your stage.